Hey guys, you are about to watch part 2 of my retrospective on the Batman franchise I recorded with a few friends of mine. But if you haven't already, go check out part 1 of this retrospective where me and my friends discussed the Batman comics, and then we discussed the 1940s Batman serials, and then we discussed the 1966 Batman movie, and then we discussed the Tim Burton slash Joel Schumacher Batman movies. In this part of the retrospective, me and my friends discussed the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, and then we discussed the Batman movies that take place in the DC Extended Universe, and then we discussed the Batman TV shows. I also want to give you all fair warning that during our discussion on the Nolan trilogy, especially in our discussion of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, you hear my dog barking a lot. Like, my dog needed to be let out, and I really hope it doesn't come off like I don't care about my dog or something, but yeah, my dog was barking a lot during our discussion of these movies. Just giving you fair warning. So, after Batman and Robin failed miserably, like as Jeremy said, it might have made some of its money back, but critically it was a failure. We had to wait till 2005 to get another Batman movie, and this one was a reboot, the beginning of a whole new Batman franchise, and that was Batman Begins, which definitely takes a lot of plot elements from Frank Miller's Year One. I mean, the character of Carmine Falcone,
yes,
like he was originated from Year One, and he's a character in this movie. Now, originally there was going to be a direct adaptation of Year One that was going to be directed by Darren Aronofsky, but that unfortunately fell through. What do you guys think of Batman Begins?
I love it. I saw it when it first came out when I was a kid, and, I just enjoyed the hell out of it, and I especially enjoy it because it did revive the Batman franchise after Joel Schumacher just, destroyed it. I love how dark it is. I love how, I love the cast, and it's just great.
I think it's a real gift that we got a filmmaker like Nolan to work on a comic book character like this, because he brings such great sort of realism to it and such a great different sensibility. Like, I love the idea of Bruce really embracing it as a symbol and the idea of Batman as an entity. It's very different from what came before in the films, at least, and it really kind of lends the film a new stamp on the character.
I think it was a refresh. It was definitely a great restart of the franchise, because after the Batman Ron was a failure, and throughout the years there were rumors about making a different kind of Batman film, but they just never came to materialize until when Chris Nolan, who was doing films like Memento and Insomnia, who was becoming rising up as a film director, he said that he was interested in doing a Batman film because he was a huge Batman. Well, he said he likes Batman, but he just never read the comics as much. He just liked the idea of Batman, though. And
if you go watch Following, which was basically his student film, on the main character's apartment door is the Batman symbol, which I just noticed while I was watching it the other day. I thought that was such a cool
foreshadowing. Yeah.
And one thing I like about this movie, now the film, it tries to be a more reality-based Batman story. Like, obviously, it's not a realistic story, but it's probably as reality-based as a story like this could possibly get. At the same time, though, I do think this movie and Nolan's films in general are pretty true to the spirit of the comics. I think more so than the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher films. And one thing I think is interesting, now the main villain is Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul. How do you properly...
It's Ra's al Ghul.
They pronounce it as Raz in this movie, but in other incarnations they pronounce it as Raish.
Yeah.
It's a mixed opinion.
The way they explain it, I think it was in the video games, was Raish is the formal way of saying it, and Raz is just the informal way. So they both work.
Okay, and one thing I want to point out, now in the comics, Ra's al Ghul is a supernatural villain. He can resurrect himself via the Lazarus Pit, and you find out in the comics that he's hundreds of years old, I think.
Yes.
In this movie, they kind of drop the supernatural stuff, but there's a very subtle implication that there might be something supernatural, but in general, Ra's is just a terrorist in this movie.
Yes.
And that's the one thing I want to point out, is the League of Shadows in this movie, they're very much like a terrorist organization in a lot of ways, but what I really like about Ra's al Ghul, and what makes him scarier in my opinion, is the fact that he genuinely believes what he's doing is right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of great villains, they believe they're doing the right thing when in fact they are most certainly not. And a lot of what I liked about this version of Ra's al Ghul was that, in the beginning he's seen as a mentor to Bruce, who is just trying to figure out, basically find himself, for lack of a better term, and he's lost, and he comes basically to help him through a lot of harsh, vigorous training, but help him nonetheless. And especially what I like about Liam Neeson's performance is, he does see Bruce as a successor, and, when Bruce betrays him, he won't go through with the killing of the murderer. You see he's devastated.
Yeah.
And, even later when he says, "It should be you standing here by my side," it's heartbreaking almost.
A lot of people, something I heard somebody say once is they say Joker is always considered like his perfect sort of yin and yang villain, but when you look at Ra's, here's a guy who is trying to do the right thing. It's not like the Joker where he just wants to cause a lot of chaos.
Yeah, like, it very much seems like Ra's al Ghul wants to destroy Gotham City because he feels like Gotham City is this just haven of crime and corruption.
Which he's right.
Yeah, and it's like, in a way, you get where he's coming from. The issue is the way he's going about it is the wrong way to do
Yeah,
it.
plus, not every single person in Gotham City is a corrupt individual.
Right,
there are good people in Gotham City that he is trying to kill.
I do want to point out, I think this film does have a lot of subtle social commentary about post 9/11 American society, like all the fear and anxiety that came about after 9/11 of terrorism, and this film is very much playing on the idea of fear. Yeah. And I think there is some definite subtle social commentary in the film.
And you get that, I think a lot of it does come from Crane to some degree, because he's a guy who's sort of using all these institutions to kind of do his own thing and really like screw with people's heads.
In a lot of ways, I would almost say Crane was a lot more despicable than Ra's al Ghul, because at least Ra's al Ghul thought what he was doing was right, whereas Crane knew it was wrong, but he was just working for the League of Shadows for the money, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, the money he thought that was there, they tricked him into believing they would hold Gotham for ransom when really they were just destroying it. But, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the Scarecrow in this movie. I mean, you could tell he's so sleazy, and, he obviously abuses his position as the head of the Arkham, psychological facility and Arkham Asylum, and I think this was very subtle. I'm not sure if it was intended, but what I kind of took from Killian's performance and the way the character was written, because when he's meeting with Falcone to discuss, smuggling the drugs in and also, stop forcing me to get your thugs out of jail time, he says, "I'm not intimidating to you." So I think, he was like, he sort of had an inferiority complex. He enjoyed the power that the mask and the fear gas gave him.
Now, isn't that something they touch on in the comics? Like, wasn't he, like, abused as a kid, and then, he was picked on as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, they don't go into that in this movie, but I assume that, that this version endured that, too. And, he says he's not very physically imposing, and, so he enjoys the fact, it's like, I'm smarter than you, and my intelligence gives me strength even over your brawn, especially when he says to Rachel, "I respect the mind's power over the body."
A really cool thing that kind of speaks to how Nolan approaches these characters is there is a moment where he goes full comic book Scarecrow when he rides up on the horse and he's got like the full costume on.
But that's also at the point where his mind is starting to go because he was exposed to his own gas.
Exactly. So like to get to that kind of comic book fantasticism, there's a real reason for it. Like
True, but like there is definitely a lot of comic book stuff in this movie. Like I would say it's arguably as reality based as we're ever going to see a Batman movie. At the same time, there's a lot of stuff that's very unrealistic. Like when Batman's controlling all the bats via that sonar thing, it's like that probably is not how it would actually work out in real life.
Yeah, I just back to the Scarecrow. I just love that Jonathan Crane. He presents himself as a calm, intelligent, sophisticated doctor, but underneath the surface is really unhinged and sadistic. In that scene where he gasses Falcone, he's talking to him, and after Falcone, says, he can't get me here, not in my town, and what are you going to do to get me to not talk? You can tell, he takes his glasses off, and, of course, there's that great line, "Would you like to see my mask?" And, you can kind of see very subtly that, he's kind of dropping the whole good doctor facade.
I know there were some people who were somewhat disappointed that he wasn't the main villain.
Yeah, I could see that.
I could see that too. It's. I mean, I remember when this came out, I only knew who Scarecrow was. I didn't know who Ra's al Ghul was until like this one and the animated show too.
Yeah, and I just love when he does. I love Carmen Falcone's line. So when did the Nut take over the Nut House? Right before he gets gassed and he sees Crane as this nightmarish creature, and his lines. They scream and they cry, much as you're doing now.
I like when Batman takes down Falcone when he makes his first night appearance, because Falcone was an evil, corrupted guy who really deserved to be behind bars.
At the same time, though, I feel bad for what happened to Falcone, because it's very much implied that he's never going to get out of that when he goes crazy. And as much as bad of a guy as he is, something like that happening to you is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, honestly.
And speaking of Falcone, I just love Tom Wilkinson's performance. I mean, he is nasty, he is mean, evil. He is just how you would figure a mob boss would look and sound like, and I just love...
At the same time, I just don't think anybody deserves that to happen to them.
I know, and but a scene I love in the movie is when, Bruce, before he started his journey to become, a crime fighter, he goes to confront Falcone after he learns that Falcone ordered the hit on Joe Chill, and he tries to, be all tough and, say, not everyone in Gotham's afraid of you, and, Falcone, he schools him, and I am tough, and I am fearful, and, you don't understand where I'm coming from, he goes on to brag about how I could blow your head off in front of the judge who's in my pocket and these off-duty cops, and no one would care.
I was about to say that, because that's the one thing that I feel like it symbolizes and touches on the film about how these these cops and these judges, they have the power in the world to do whatever they want, but what goes on behind them.
They're in the pockets of Falcone.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love it also in that scene how he openly mocks Bruce's father by saying, in the joint, Chill told me about the night he killed your parents and said your father begged like a dog. I mean, that is cold.
Yeah. Such a fucked up scene.
Yeah.
And I met the actor who played Joe Chill, Richard Brake, and I asked him about it, and he said, Christopher Nolan was very relaxed during production, even though, there was a lot of stress, and I asked him about working with Christian Bale, and he said, he was very intense during the shoot, and, being that I killed his parents, he didn't like me very much.
He's kind of like another actor, just like Val Kilmer, tough to work with, too.
I mean, maybe not as bad as Val Kilmer.
Well, remember Terminator, one of the Terminator films.
Yeah, I remember.
But we're not going to get too much into the details of that.
He just gets really in the zone.
He does.
He's a very intense actor. So to be abruptly brought out of that,
you can tell by the way he plays Batman. That voice. I mean, it's
takes it seriously.
Somebody jokes. It sounds like somebody sort of choking on pieces of broken glass.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin Conroy, who was the voice of Batman in the animated series, he said somebody really should have stopped him and took him out of the zone for a second and went, Christian, you sound ridiculous. You need to dial it back.
Someone at Comic-Con made a joke that you should have dubbed his voice in The Dark Knight.
I mean, a lot of people do give him a lot of crap for the voice, and at times it gets a little too over the top, but ultimately I do think it works for this entire interpretation, because this Batman is just... he's a beast. He is full-on intimidating. And not only that, but with Batman, there really has to be a difference between the voices of Bruce Wayne and Batman. So, I'm like, would you rather he have spoken in his Bruce Wayne voice? That wouldn't have been good.
I feel like in this film, his voice is not as deep as the rest of the series was. It's not... When I watch this film, I'm like, okay, it's not that bad, his voice. But in the sequels, it's like...
There is a difference. And I read somewhere, I'm not so... totally sure if this is true, but I read somewhere that when they film it, it's a little lighter, the voice, and it's actually deepened in post-production.
That could...
What did you think of, the character of Rachel Dawes, the Katie Holmes character in the movie? I didn't mind her. I thought she
was alright. I didn't have any problems with her. Really, she was just she's just there being a potential love interest, and she's also trying to bring down Falcone, and
it makes sense to give him a friend in the DA.
Yeah,
because that's a little bit more real to life, and also it gives Bruce kind of a connection to his childhood that also is coming up into the real world with him.
Yeah,
she's in a different place though. She's in a place where she's practicing law. He's in a place where he's about to become a vigilante.
Yeah,
and he's a millionaire. Billionaire.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people for some reason criticized Rachel Holmes's
Katie Holmes.
Katie Holmes' performance in this movie, but I mean, I don't really think it's that bad.
No, I thought she was okay. Not great, but nothing special.
I will say that I think Maggie is better in Dark Knight.
Yeah, I can see that.
And another thing I want to say about Christian is I just love how he plays Bruce Wayne. I mean, he really nails the whole cocky playboy act. I mean, I just love the scene where he's with those, wasp
supermodels
friends of his in the hotel, and the owner. Well, I don't know if it's the owner, but someone who works there tries to kick him out, and he just goes, "Yeah, I'm buying this hotel." And,
I thought it was funny, like when he's like leaving with the models. She's like, he runs into Rachel. He hasn't seen since the Falcone thing, and she's like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I was just swimming."
I also like how Lucius Fox, he's a nice guy, but he also can get a little sassy at times. Like after Batman first encounters the Scarecrow and he, gets gassed, and Lucius Fox saves him. He tells him the process, which is complicated, and Bruce is like, "Am I supposed to understand any of that?" And Lucius just goes, "No, I just wanted you to know how hard it was," which I just think is hilarious because he's basically saying, "Yeah, you inconvenienced me, and I'm making sure you know it."
I love Morgan Freeman in this film. Like him and Christian Bale's chemistry is so great. It's like, wow.
What did you think of Wrecker Hauer in the movie?
I like him. He's a good actor, and his role. I mean, he's not really a bad guy, but he is kind of a douche.
Yeah, like Wrecker Hauer is one of my favorite actors. Like he's a very underrated actor in my opinion.
Yeah, he's his character is planning to just sell out Wayne Enterprises, of course until Bruce comes back, and I just love how Bruce kind of he says, "Oh, I'm not here to interfere," and he wants to lure him into a false sense of security for when he buys back the company at the end of the movie.
I mean, I'll watch anything with Rutger in it.
Yeah.
It is, in the end, obviously he gets his comeuppance, but it does feel almost like it was being left open to have Rutger come back in a sequel, and a lot of people were speculating that he was going to become the Nolan-verse version of Penguin, which I think would have been awesome to see Rutger do.
That could have been interesting, a different Penguin interpretation.
Yeah, that actually reminds me, another thing I love about this movie is, I don't know if any of you noticed, but a lot of times lines that characters said are often used against them later by other characters. Like when Ra's and Bruce are on the ice and he says, you need to remember
to mind your surroundings.
Yeah, you never did learn to mind your surroundings. Bruce later uses that in their final fight when, Rutger Hauer says to Lucius Fox, about him firing him, and didn't you get the memo? Lucius Fox later says that when Bruce has him replace Earl. That was the character's name, Mr. Earl. And I really enjoy that. And it's all not always used. Lines aren't always used against characters after they've been said. Bruce's father's line, what do we do when we fall? That was later used by Alfred to comfort Bruce after the League of Shadows.
And then, Batman even says to Rachel Dawes something that she said to him. Yeah.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
And I actually do like the character of Rachel Dawes because, I just feel like she's a great, you could tell she's almost the thing that's sort of, keeping Bruce balanced in some way. Even when he's putting on the whole Playboy act, when he sees Rachel Dawes at the restaurant, you could tell he's almost ashamed of himself, the way he looks, and,
he even says, "Rachel, this isn't me,"
Yeah.
It kind of shows, just because, he has, all this money in the world doesn't mean that he's really necessarily happy,
and I just love when Bruce, he kind of should get into his role as Playboy, when one of his, rich friends says, "Oh, Bruce, help me out, about Batman." And he mocks himself saying, "Oh, a guy who dresses up like a bat clearly has issues."
Actually, in that dinner scene, one of the actresses was in The Following by Chris Nolan.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I forget what character she was.
I know which one.
Yeah.
The blonde one.
Yes, the blonde one, yeah.
I love Following.
That was good. That was really good.
The whole cast in this movie is great.
It is. It's a great all-star cast. It's a great film. It's wow, what more can you get out of this film that makes it so likable?
And then he made Dark Knight, and we were like, whoa.
Yeah,
I know.
A lot of the action is very exhilarating. There's a little bit of problems with the editing. Some things look a little too close. It can be a little hard to tell what's going on, but ultimately, it's such an adrenaline rush to watch it. His first appearance in the movie where one of the criminals goes, "Where are you?" And he just goes, "Here," and then grabs him.
It's one of my favorite moments.
And the guy goes, "Oh!"
I think that this film has a lot of great films. You can go all day talking about what was the best moments of this movie. When Falcone's like, "What the hell are you?" and he punches the car and he goes, "I'm Batman."
That was the
Nice
perfect
coat.
introduction to him.
Yeah, it was.
So now on to the sequel to Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, which is considered by many to be one of the greatest comic book movies ever made, and it's considered by many to be like the greatest Batman movie ever made. I'm not sure. I almost would agree with that, though. I do think this is probably the best of the Nolan trilogy, in my humble opinion. But I don't think it's necessarily a flawless movie, but it's still a damn good movie. And a movie can be flawed, but still be a masterpiece. But, yeah, what do you guys think of The Dark Knight?
I mean, I personally think this is the greatest comic book movie. I mean, this was one of the movies that really said to people, hey, you can take comic books seriously in films, and it's, the cast, especially the late, great Heath Ledger, is just incredible to watch, and the action is... like I said with Batman Begins, just a big adrenaline rush when you're watching it. It's awesome.
I love Dark Knight. Yeah, I don't really think there's anybody that doesn't, because it's so weird.
This movie has its detractors. Like,
True.
Nolan has his detractors. There are people who
yeah.
despise Nolan.
Can't believe it.
I love this film. It's one of the best Batman films. It's also one of the best comic book films I've ever seen in my life. I remember I saw this I can't believe this is 10 years ago, and 10 years since Heath Ledger died, and 10 years since this came out, when everyone was it was getting so much hype, oh, this is gonna be one of the best performances of Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger get one of the best performances you could ever see in a, not just in a comic book, in a film period. It was so chilling and
Yeah, I mean, his Joker is definitely my favorite interpretation of the character. I mean, he is creepy, menacing, cold-blooded, and doesn't care about anyone, including himself.
One thing I like about the Joker in this movie is, it's definitely because Nolan tries to do things a little more reality-based with his comic book movies, so the Joker, instead of having white skin, instead it's just clown makeup that he wears, but very much like the Joker from the comics, this Joker doesn't know his origin, really.
Which
he gives two different stories for how he gets those scars.
Yeah, that is definitely inspired by Batman the Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The Killing Joke was a definite inspiration.
Yeah.
And Long Halloween, I think, were the two biggest inspirations for this movie.
And the scene where, during the funeral for Commissioner Loeb, where he and his goons disguise themselves as the firing brigade, that was inspired, I believe, by the character's first appearance, where he disguises himself as a cop.
Once again, I think this is a great movie, but I don't think it's necessarily flawless. There are little things. There are definitely plot holes in the movie, and the scene in the movie where you think Commissioner Gordon gets killed, and it's the Joker out of makeup, out, on the street, pretending to be one of the cops. It's okay, people know that the Joker has these two scars on his face. None of the cops around the Joker said, hey, that cop right there has scars that suspiciously look like the Joker's scars.
The other cops that are firing the guns, for the funeral, they were his goons. Not to mention also,
But it wasn't all the cops around them, though.
Yes, but there also is a chance that little group, maybe where they were supposed to be positioned, maybe it was separate from the others, since they were the ones who were firing the firing squad, maybe they had certain organized positions, And also, he was standing in the middle of the group, so the others were kind of, I guess, obscuring his face.
I will say that it is overpraised at times, this one, because even now where we're in sort of the renaissance of comic book movies, stuff is still getting compared to this left and right, particularly from DC nuts.
I think this is really what started I think Marvel, this lineup of Marvel movies, actually owe a lot to this movie in a lot of ways.
I'd say so, yeah.
Actually, the year this film came out, Iron Man came out at the start of the cinematic universe.
Yeah. I mean, I actually saw both this movie and Iron Man 3 times in the theater.
Wow.
I love these movies that much.
Yeah, this kind of solidified that comic book movies could be commercially viable. Though.
Yeah.
So that kind of made studio heads kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I like how this one is really... It's almost like a Michael Mann-style crime drama film that just happens to feature Batman.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And, Ledger's Joker, I also love that he is a master manipulator, and he is able to easily get under people's skin. I mean, the opening scene establishes the manipulating part when he manipulates his own henchmen into killing each other. And then later, he manipulates, Detective Stevens in the interrogation unit. He says, how many of your friends did I kill? And, Stevens, he tries to keep calm and, says, he basically says, I'm not going to give in to you. But, he just keeps talking and he lets his temper get the better with him, and that allows the Joker to use him as a hostage.
Yeah, one thing I find very interesting about this movie, now as I mentioned, there's subtle social commentary in Batman Begins. How Batman Begins is sort of a commentary on post 9/11 society and the fear of terrorism. This one is almost a commentary on the government's reactions to terrorism, right or wrong, where you see Batman, very much abusing his authority with the Joker, and then, Batman using Lucius Fox's sonar technology to spy on every citizen of Gotham. Definitely a lot of allegories for, the Bush administration's response to terrorism.
Oh my god, back when I saw this, I never would have given that much of a thought of that one.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of social commentary in this film, and the Joker is very much a terrorist in this movie, but the thing with, Ra's al Ghul, as you were pointing out, Chris, Ra's al Ghul is a terrorist who wants something. The Joker in this is a terrorist who doesn't want anything. He just wants pure anarchy.
Which, when you think about it, is a little freakier. Because, Alfred says it best, some guys just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to have an agenda, but when you're just somebody who wants to blow shit up, that's a whole different...
Yeah, you almost get the sense that he does have an agenda, but it's his own fucked up agenda. Yeah, I almost got the sense that this was somebody who maybe had something really horrible done to him, and, he just lost all faith in all humanity and everything, and this is kind of this is him trying to this is his own justice. He feels...
I mean, like I said before, this Joker just does not care about anything. Even himself, just from his look. I mean, his makeup is, uneven, his hair is all messy, probably hasn't showered.
There's a part of me that almost thinks that Joker wanted Batman to kill him.
Yeah, he did.
Probably.
Yeah,
because then he would have proven that Batman is corruptible.
It's funny that we were talking about Wrecker Hauer in Batman Begins, because I would actually compare the Joker in this movie to Wrecker Hauer's character in The Hitcher, in the sense that you don't really know where he came from, because in The Hitcher, John Ryder, it sort of implies that you don't even know if that's actually his real name in The Hitcher, and, it's sort of the same deal where it's I kind of got the feeling in The Hitcher that he very much wanted C. Thomas Howell's character to kill him, and it's kind of the same thing here, where it's he
watched that movie.
Yeah, he wanted, the Joker kind of wanted Batman to off him, not just to prove this point that all men are corruptible, but also, maybe the Joker was somebody who was suicidal or something, and maybe he decided to go out with a bang.
Yeah, I definitely saw it as that. He might have said to Harvey Dent that, I'm not a schemer, but really, he definitely is a schemer. I mean, all the plans he makes, that's all him,
I am somewhat disappointed that they killed Two-Face off so quickly, because, once again, he's my favorite Batman villain, and I felt like I would have liked to have seen him continue.
One of the reasons they killed him off was because when they were filming, I think they meant to make Ledger the big one that was going to eventually appear again, but of course we know what happened with that.
Ledger was said he was interested in coming back for the third film, but when he died, it changed everything.
Oh yeah, and I like Two-Face in this movie. I think he's definitely a big step up from Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And, Aaron Eckhart, he does a great job of, he makes Harvey Dent likable. You like this guy. He's trying to honestly clean up the city. Absolutely devastating the circumstances that lead to his disfigurement, especially because he
lost the woman he loved.
Well, not only that, but, before any of that even happened, he had been, there was a lot of tension between him and Commissioner Gordon, because he said, I've investigated officers in your unit for internal affairs for being corrupt, and, the corruption, because it was the corrupt officers who drove him and Rachel to, the bombs.
Yeah.
So, that's another reason why he blames Gordon, because he's like, I warned you, you didn't listen. The Joker, he definitely knew that Batman had a thing for Rachel, even though he didn't know who he was, so he knew, okay, he's going to choose to go for Rachel, so I'm going to switch the addresses because I really want him to go for Dent. And he knew that it would devastate him.
And that's where this also takes a lot from Killing Joke, is the sense that in the Killing Joke, the Joker's goal was to really drive Commissioner Gordon insane. His point was to break people, to make people give up, abandon their morals, to, go crazy. One bad day will drive a person over the edge, and that's what he wanted.
Yeah, and that's definitely in this movie.
So that's why I think, he probably, at least in his head, maybe has some kind of backstory worked out for himself, where maybe he did have that one bad day that drove him over the edge, and he wants to prove anybody could, like, I can't be the only one who's crazy.
Two stories he tells, they could be complete fabrications, or maybe parts of them are true. We really don't know.
Which I love. It's,
And,
it's such a great like tapestry of like insanity.
And I just
that character.
Even though this was not the Joker's performance, not really horror, but it was like an aspect, like a horrific thing of what he does.
Oh, some of the things are definitely, like, almost... They're horror elements, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I also just want to talk, a little more about Heath Ledger's preparation, because he really was a committed actor. I mean, before he died, he said, that after he saw Batman Begins and learned that Chris was, going to have the Joker in the Dark Knight, he instantly knew how to play it. And he, met with Chris, whose ideas were similar to his, and... when you hear him in the interviews and also read about his preparation, locking himself away in the hotel room, making the scrapbook, he worked on the voice, the posture, the movement, everything. That is terrific acting. I mean, it's just, he could have really gone on to become such a legend.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah,
a lot of people compare this to The Crow in the sense that they're both movies where a lead actor died before it was released.
Because they were both 28 when they died, but the only difference is he died of a gunshot, Brandon Lee. And
Ledger died long after the movie had finished filming.
Yeah.
His death came well into post-production, 6 months before the movie's release.
Yeah.
And what a shame!
It's a shame.
I can remember going to the movie like before he died a few weeks earlier before, and I go to the movies and I see I'm looking around, I see there's a poster for The Dark Knight. I'm like, there's going to be a Batman film, and ironically, a few weeks later he died. It's like
I want to point out something funny.
What's that?
Before the movie came out in high school, this friend of mine in high school, we found out that he died, and my friend was worried that this would they would push back the release date of the movie because the actor died, and my friend actually said, I swear if this guy ruins the release of the new Batman movie, I'm going to dig up his grave and burn in his corpse.
That's messed up.
That is.
I went to high school with some messed up people.
Yeah.
John should know.
I know, believe me.
His death really didn't affect The Dark Knight, although it did affect the movie he was working on at the time, Terry Gilliam's fantasy film, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. I mean, that movie was severely affected by his death. But, I never believed that playing the Joker drove him crazy. I thought that was, the tabloids would hype that up.
There's a lot of different theories. I think it's it'll be a never ending theory about how he died and what really caused his death.
Heath himself even said that the Joker was the most fun he had ever had playing a role.
That's
I've seen that interview. He's shaking. He's and then that was the last interview. Then a few weeks later, dead.
Yeah, I mean, there's this great radio interview where he goes into how, he prepared for the role, and it's just fascinating to listen to.
Yeah, that voice is the best part that he came up with. Yeah. Because I'm glad you brought that up, that he put so much into it.
Yeah.
I always wonder sometimes if he hadn't died, where he could have been today, what other films he could have done, how else is he?
I do sometimes wonder, and I think he gives a great performance in the movie, but I sometimes wonder how many people were praising his performance just because he recently died.
That's a good point.
I was praising it because I loved it, because, I was 13 when he died. I had only known him as the actor who was going to be playing the Joker in the new Batman movie. I had not seen movies like Brokeback Mountain, or I'm Not There, or 10 Things I Hate About You.
Actually, that was the first thing I ever saw, because my sisters, they were such, again, they were older than me, they were, big into the teen films, and that was, the first time I ever saw him, but at that time, I didn't know who he was. I had no idea that he was a big star around the time because I was little. What did I know about Heath Ledger or Brokeback Mountain?
So when I did finally see the movie, his performance just blew me away, because I just, I like I said, I knew he was going to be playing the Joker, but I didn't know at the time how good an actor he was.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my god, this is awesome.
Now, I know a lot of people love comparing him to Jack Nicholson's Joker, but to me it's they're such different portrayals of the character that you really can't compare them.
I mean, Ledger's is definitely more sinister and a lot less refined than Jack's.
Whereas Nicholson was more of comic, true comic book to 1930s and 40s.
Yeah, I mean, Jack's Joker, he was creepy, but at the end he's on the building, he's kicking his legs, shaking his ass, doing that dance. He definitely got a bit over the top, which was great. It was a lot of fun, but
I thought Heath Ledger was more intimidating as a Joker than Nicholson.
Of course.
Oh my god.
Yeah, well, this one definitely, I think, plays up more this idea of the mental illness angle, where you could tell this is a guy who has severe psychological issues.
And I also, like I mentioned with Jack Nicholson, Ledger's Joker, in my opinion, can handle himself better in a fight. I mean, Yeah, during the penthouse fight, he does have his henchmen do some of the work, but he still gets in on it. I mean, he gets that spike out of his shoe and he kicks the shit out of Batman.
And I love how the movie really touches on the fact that his henchmen are obviously crazy too. Like, it gives a realistic reason why those people would be working with the Joker. Like, that's one thing, like, I notice in the comics. It's like, I see all these henchmen working for him, and I'm like, why would you work for this guy when you should know how unstable this guy is? But here you find out, okay, one of his henchmen was a paranoid schizophrenic, so it's like he's attracting people who already have severe psychological issues. So this gave more of a reason for his henchmen.
Remember the mobster that like wants to like work with him and like think that he has like interesting ideas, and they have like all this like money that they stole, and he gets up. And the lesson learned: don't work for the Joker with money, especially because it also just shows like you said, not only does he care about like society or people, he doesn't care about money at all either. He can care less.
He even says that great line: "It's not about money; it's about sending a message."
Yeah, he says that he's a man of word, and he is, but he usually, there's a twist to it. There's a catch. He's a master, a schemer, and manipulator. He'll tell people whatever he has to get them to do what he wants. That one thug of his who, he told that he, the one who he planted the cell phone in, and he says, he told me it would be like bright lights, like Christmas, he'd make the pain go away. No, he's not going to do that. He's using you.
The interrogation scene, like when he with Batman the Joker, is probably like one of my favorite scenes of like all time in like film history. When he's like trying, like you said, the good cop, bad cop. I like the way you're thinking.
And I also love just before Batman comes into that, when Commissioner Gordon is trying to get the information out of him, how, he gives off he says that really cold comment, I've been here. Who do you leave him with? Your people? Assuming they are still your people and not Maroni's. Does it depress you, Commissioner, to know just how alone you really are? I mean, you can see in Gordon's reaction that gets to him.
I feel like when you think about like a lot of things the Joker says gets to Batman a lot in the best of ways, no matter like what he says.
I mean, you could tell that he's pushing Batman's buttons in that interrogation room. He wants Batman to kill him. He doesn't care that he's getting the shit beaten out of him. He's laughing his head off. And a lot of people I've heard kind of say, when they do. Some people don't really care for Heath's performance because they think it's a little too distant from the comic book version, and this is a more grounded portrayal.
Yeah, so, but you know what? I think this is really true to the Joker from the comics, in the sense that he doesn't. Once again, the whole idea that he doesn't know his origin, like...
Yeah, and he doesn't give a shit about anyone else, including himself. He has no regard for human life at all.
I think the movie might give him slightly more of an agenda than the comics, though. Like,
and also, like we mentioned, the fact that he wants to bring everyone to his level and also tells different stories, that's taken from Batman the Killing Joke. I mean, look-wise, okay, maybe it wasn't like the comics, but honestly, the look works. It is terrifying. It is, it's great.
At first, I didn't like the look when I first saw it on the paper, but after watching the film, I changed my mind. I didn't really care much about the look. I cared more about the performance behind it.
Yeah, I remember, when the movie, I think it was either in the middle of production or after it had wrapped filming, they released the first photo of him as the Joker with, it's a black background and it's just the front of his face.
Yeah, I remember that picture.
And it was chilling. I mean, that red on his lips, I thought, oh wow, it looks like blood. It was scary.
To me, it looked like something you saw from a horror film, but...
See, I was the inverse of that. When I first saw pictures of him as the Joker, I was not impressed. I was like, this honestly looks kind of terrible.
Yeah.
And it didn't inform like how I looked at the movie, or like I didn't write the movie off at all. I was just like, this kind of rubs me the wrong way. But then I went and saw it, and I was like, okay, this is pretty damn good.
Right. After watching the film, you didn't care about the look. All you cared about how great the performance was. That's the way I looked at it after that.
Exactly.
And I liked how in some scenes, the makeup, some of it was kind of off. It was a little, sloppy because, he obviously puts the makeup on himself, and he's no makeup artist. He wouldn't do a good job, so I thought that was a nice touch. He's got the makeup pieces of it all over his hands. He's sloppy, he's messy, grungy.
Yeah. One common criticism that Nolan gets, which I completely disagree with, is that his movies lack heart. And I'm like, no, I highly disagree with that. Yeah. And a lot of people criticize his Batman trilogy for being humorless. There's actually quite a bit of humor in these movies.
No, there's some humor in it. Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne's chemistry, they have like a few humorous moments. Yes, Mr. Wayne does come in black.
And also during the restaurant scene, where, Harvey Dent brings Rachel, and Bruce says, so why don't we put a few tables together? I don't think they'll let us. Oh, they should. I own the place. And, talking about Christian Bale's acting in this movie, Heath Ledger is without a doubt the best one in the movie, but that by no means means, that everyone else is bad.
Yeah.
And I think Christian, one of my favorite scenes with him is, right after Rachel's death, he's sitting alone in his penthouse, and, he's obviously so sad and heartbroken, and Alfred comes to give him Rachel's letter, which she had written before her death. And, he's saying, like, what the hell have I done? I was supposed to inspire good, not this, and that Rachel was going to wait for him. And I think that's some great acting on Christian's part. You can see the sorrow. Mm-hmm. It's like, this chaos is what my actions have led to. Rachel's death was my fault. And I think that's a great scene.
Yeah. Once again, I think it's a great movie,
Yeah.
Once again, I could somewhat understand somebody thinking it's a little overrated, but personally, I think it deserves most of the praise that it gets.
I still love it. It's just...
Admittedly, there are some moments of dialogue that I was like, this city is filled with people ready to believe in good.
Actually,
there's some cheesy dialogue in the film, in my opinion.
What does everyone think about the Scarecrow's cameo in this movie?
Oh, it's great.
I like it.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't like what I have to offer, you can buy from someone else. Assuming Batman left anyone else to buy from.
And also, that's like the first time we hear just like his natural voice in the mask, like without all this fear toxin.
I just love how he has he has the gas in his wrists, like something on his wrist, and when one of the Batman impersonators tries to capture him, he just raises that wrist and gasses the hell out of him.
And again, first time seeing that, I was confused. I'm like, wait, why does Batman have a gun? I'm like, wait, that's not the Batman. It was like just some random people dressed as Batman.
I also really, like I said before, love Aaron Eckhart in the role of Harvey.
Yeah, he's good.
I just love the part where Commissioner Gordon's trying to comfort them, but Harvey's just filled with rage, and he's, like, I'm sorry, Harvey, and he just turns around, and that's when we see his scarred face for the first time, and he says, no, you're not. Not yet.
Yeah. This definitely, I think, does Two-Face much better than the
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good idea, to have, the Joker be responsible, basically, for what happens to him, because... and also, the hospital scene between him and Harvey, it's just great to see the Joker manipulating him, what little... He's basically eroding what little is left of Harvey's sanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also think it's interesting how Harvey Dent says the Joker was just a mad dog, and he's going after the people who let him off his leash, when it's really the other way around. He's kind of becomes the Joker's dog.
Yeah, I mean, the Joker, like I said, he's a master manipulator, so to get Harvey from wanting to just kill the Joker to actually being like, hey, you don't want to kill me, you want to get revenge on the people who, laid the circumstances for my rampage to happen, all the corrupt, aka Gordon, not investigating and kicking out the corrupt cops in his unit. And also the mobsters who hired him, like Maroni.
If you think about it, I feel like the Joker does a great job manipulating everybody in this film. Like Commissioner Gordon, Batman, Harvey Dent. He's just.
I also love Eric Roberts as Maroni. He is great. I just love how snide and sarcastic he can be. And.
Eric Roberts is a great actor.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
what I love about these Batman movies is that Christopher Nolan, even with the smaller parts like that, he still puts, even though they're not going to be on the poster, he still puts some well-known actors in those roles.
He does. He's a great casting director.
Yeah, and I just love, after Commissioner Gordon's supposed death, when he's Maroni's in the nightclub with his girlfriend, I just love how he just says to her, what makes you think I want to hear you talk?
What a douche.
Oh, yeah. And, a lot of people speculate that he might not... I believe a lot of people speculate that he could have survived the crash that Harvey causes, but, Harvey put on his seatbelt. Maroni didn't, and he's never seen for the rest of the movie or The Dark Knight Rises, so I think it's safe to assume that he died.
Now let's move on to the third film of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises, which takes a lot of plot elements from The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, as well as the Nightfall story arc. And The Dark Knight Rises, this is somewhat polarizing among a lot of Batman fans and fans of this trilogy. I do think it's probably the weakest of this trilogy, but I still enjoy The Dark Knight Rises. It does have problems, but I still enjoy this movie. What do you guys think of Dark Knight Rises?
I agree. I mean, I don't really hate this film. I just think it's not one of the best ones. It's one of the weaker ones. Plus, I think at this point in time, when after The Dark Knight was such like a big hit, that Nolan was like contracted for one more film, and Nolan was like, "No, I don't want to do another Batman film." But then he's like, "I'll do it, but I'm just gonna do it the way I want to." I think he got too lazy with this one.
I mean, I think Dark Knight left this like indelible mark because Begins almost became sort of like a forgotten movie in its wake, and then it set this like incredible standard for Dark Knight Rises, and I don't think it was going to be able to meet that no matter what. You know, overall, I think it is a flawed movie, but it does end the way that Nolan wanted it to end, and it is a good ending, especially if you love Dark Knight.
Yeah.
The only problem is most of the callbacks are to Batman Begins, so you have to have seen the first two. But I like it personally. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like I feel like The Dark Knight, even though it was a sequel to Batman Begins, you could easily watch that without seeing the first one. Here, it's like, okay, you have to see the first two in order to get what's going on here.
I mean, I'll admit it's not as good as The Dark Knight, but I still really enjoy the hell out of this movie. You know, I remember being, so excited for it leading up to its release, and when I saw it, okay, there were some problems, but ultimately it was still very enjoyable, and I love Tom Hardy as Bane.
Oh yeah, he was great as Bane. Honestly, a lot of people made fun of his voice, and yes, you could make fun of the voice too, but it's like the voice did not bother me. It really didn't. I think this was definitely more true to the character than, obviously, the Batman and Robin version. But I think this movie does a great job at really capturing, one, how Bane is one of Batman's most intelligent villains, and obviously this goes for a more realistic take on Bane because it drops the Venom thing. Yeah. Instead, like, it's supposed to be like, the mask is like a pain reliever.
It delivers an anesthetic, which, I mean, they don't address it as Venom in the movie, but it could be,
Yeah, but it doesn't, like, expand his muscles.
No, I know that, but I'm saying this could still be considered the Venom. It just does a different thing.
There are some interesting, like, implications if you really pay attention, if you're, like, a diehard Batman fan. Like, the doctor in the cell adjacent to Bruce down in the pit, he looks a lot like Hugo Strange.
Okay.
And you could say, like, maybe that's where the anesthetic came from. So it's,
One thing I want to point out about the prison that Bane came from, that in the movie, it seems like that's supposed to be somewhere in the Middle East. How come there's a bunch of white guys there? I'm sorry, but
I don't know. I didn't give it that much thought.
There were a few other kinds of people there, though.
Yeah, but there were a surprising amount of white guys for a prison that's supposed to be in, like, the Middle East. I know in the comics the prison is in, like, Cuba or a country similar to Cuba, but in the movie it seems to be the Middle East or something.
Bane is, like, Spanish in the comic, but in the movie he's, like, they make him, like, British or something.
Right. Yeah.
Which, I mean, what isn't too big of a deal.
No, I didn't care about that.
Oh, no, I don't... It's not that it's just, like, the fact where that prison is supposed to be.
Yeah.
It seems like it's the Middle East, but I'm like, where the hell is that prison supposed to be?
And I love that it was this huge extrapolation of Bane's prison in the comics. Because in the comics, it was literally just like a tiny, almost like grate that they shoved him in. And he spent, like, I think what was supposed to be like 12 years in it.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the light until I was a man, so it doesn't mean but blindness.
It was even more that in the books. Because he literally was just in like a tiny hole for years. That movie really extrapolates it because now it's like a giant pit just in the middle of nowhere, and they throw Bruce in it, and there's like this whole community of people living in there. So it's almost like
and you definitely you feel some sympathy for Bane because they keep a little bit of his backstory from the comics. At the same time, there's the whole twist in the movie that was really Talia al Ghul.
I didn't see that coming. That was like a big shocker and twist for everybody.
If you'd been familiar with Bane ahead of time, though, it wouldn't have been crazy surprising because he did fall in love with Talia in the comics.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right about that.
So
I mean, there were also, as far as the Miranda Tate character is concerned, in the movie, there are very subtle hints that alluding to the fact that she's Talia, but they're very subtle.
The thing that gave it away for me was actually in the trailer when she's wearing the domino mask. I was like, that has to indicate something.
Well, there was also
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Joey King, the actress who played the young Talia al Ghul in the flashbacks, she actually revealed before the movie's release, all I can reveal to you is that I'm playing a young Talia al Ghul. And Christopher Nolan probably wasn't happy she said that because, if the young Talia al Ghul appears in the movie, then obviously the older one will appear too.
Yeah.
And
And also you're supposed to think that that kid is Bane as a child, and then
yeah, because it looks like it.
Honestly, maybe before the film came out, I kind of heard a rumor that she was gonna be Talia, but at the same time, I try not to look much into it because I feel like when I try to read too much into it, I tend to overanalyze and not get excited for the film.
Yeah, and I do like how this really does tie back to Batman Begins, the fact that Bane was a member of the League of Shadows, and I feel like Bane in this movie is very similar to Ra's al Ghul in the sense that you get the sense that he does believe what he's doing is right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you find out that he's really only doing it for Talia, which in some ways you could argue makes him even more tragic, that it's almost like a tragic love story.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, even so, I never really saw him as being her lackey. I figure that after Talia learned of her father's death, she reached out to Bane and said, even though he excommunicated you, he still rescued you from the pit, and now this man, Batman, has murdered him. We need to do justice by him. And this, I thought they planned it out together. I never thought of him as just her.
Oh, I never thought that either, but
and, about Bane, when I first heard Tom Hardy was cast, I didn't know who he was.
I know he was. He was in Inception before.
I'd seen Inception, but I didn't really...
He's been around for a long time. I think at that time he's gained more popular recognition until now.
But anyway, I didn't know who... I had seen Inception, but, he wasn't really someone I really remembered from it, so I looked into other movies he was in, and I watched Bronson and Warrior.
Warrior was great. I loved the Warrior.
And he is such a beast in those movies, and I immediately said after watching them, he's going to make a perfect Bane, and he is intimidating as Bane. First of all, that mask, I'm actually glad that they didn't go with the whole luchador mask. That would have looked a little silly.
It's funny you say that about him intimidating as Bane. People argue that he wasn't as no, he was intimidated. I don't agree with people about that.
Yeah. His mask looks like teeth. It is scary, and of course, that mask being attached to someone as big and bulky and muscular as him, he's scary.
Oh yeah. What do you think of Anne Hathaway's Selena Kyle?
She's okay, but I prefer Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman.
Well, you know what it is, though? It's like they're two completely different takes on the character. I would say it almost seems like the Selena Kyle in this movie is a little more true to the Selena Kyle of the comics than Michelle Pfeiffer's one, which was obviously, that was Tim Burton's version of Catwoman. Yeah. This is much more, slightly more true to the comics, I would say. I thought she did a good job, personally.
It's like a streamlined version of her in the comics, basically.
Yeah.
I liked her a lot, honestly.
I agree. I wouldn't really say she was really a bad Catwoman. She's not really one of my favorite actors to have played Catwoman. She doesn't make my list of favorite Catwoman actresses.
Yeah. I did like... an actress who I think is very underrated is Juno Temple, and I liked her small role in the movie.
I don't even like Juno Temple that much, and I didn't think she wasn't that good in the movie.
John, be quiet.
A scene there's a lot of scenes I want to talk about. One of the ones I want to talk about is the opening plane heist, which I thought was very well done.
So well shot.
And it definitely continues the tradition of the main villain disguising himself as one of his henchmen. Ra's al Ghul does it for most of Batman Begins. The Joker does it in the opening bank heist in The Dark Knight. And now Bane is doing it in the opening plane heist in The Dark Knight Rises. I just love that they have that in each film.
I love the music to it, the beat and the tone.
Yeah, the plane heist is it's so well shot. They did a lot of it very practically, and I just love the dialogue between Bane and the CIA executive. The CIA executive in that scene is so obnoxious. You're almost like, wow, this guy really deserves what he's about to get.
It's Littlefinger from Thrones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it seems a good choice because he's such a conniver on that show.
And I just love how, the CIA executive just tries to mock Bane by saying, well, congratulations, you got yourself caught, so what's next? Step in your master plan. And Bane just responds, crashing this plane with no survivors. And, he immediately just starts punching the hell out of everyone there. And I just love, when they turn the plane, around, and Bane is, first hanging on the, one of the chairs, I think, and then he drops and he makes this huge thud. And that just further shows how big and imposing he is.
Yeah. And I like how in the movie, I mentioned, Bane's agenda in the movie, how it seems like he believes what he's doing is right. At the same time, though, you almost get the sense that he doesn't fully believe everything he's telling, his followers in the movie. He's just doing that as a way to get them to follow him, almost.
Yeah, almost like the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, even, in the film, when he takes over Gotham City, you almost get the sense that he's trying to round people up by saying this is like a socialist revolution or
Yeah.
something, and it's not. It kind of leaves it ambiguous whether he really believes in that ideology or if that's just his way of getting people to follow him.
I think it's the second one. Yeah, I think he just really is doing this all like for Talia and all that. And
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
it plays into the sort of the themes you were talking about with the previous one about like mass surveillance and institutions. In this one, it's more about the divide between rich and poor.
Oh, definitely.
It's like the scene where Bane goes into the stock exchange and the guy's like, "There's no money you could steal here," and Bane goes, "Really? Why are you people here?"
Yeah.
Every time I saw Bane snap someone's neck, I freaked out. I was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah, I just I also love Bane. You know, his voice. The pitch of it changes a lot. You know, in some scenes it's very low and very deep, and in other scenes, like the one where he's giving the speech, you know, he's reading Gordon's speech. You know, it's lighter. You know, I prefer it when it's slow and deep because it sounds way more scary and menacing. I mean, Bane to me is like almost like a movie monster. You know.
That's a cool way to look at him.
Yeah. Even like not to like back with the voice, like not that I didn't hate the voice, but when I first heard him, like it sounded like a combination of Sean Connery and Darth Vader combined together.
And you're not the only one who said that. Like, that's been said multiple times by like millions of people have said that same thing.
I just love how, you know, when Bane's fighting, he can get really aggressive and animalistic. Like in the end, towards the end, where Batman, you know, breaks the mask and gets the upper hand on him, you know, he knows that the anesthetic is going to wear off and he's going to be in intense pain, so that makes him just go crazy. He's throwing all these wild punches and he's making all these animalistic, you know, sounds. It's just, he's a beast.
The fight scene between him and Bane when he broke the bat, I'm thinking, wow.
They perfected
They
that
did.
breaking moment.
And in a way, I had a feeling like that was going to come. Like I'm like, he's going to break his back, just like in the comic.
If you've read Nightfall, like chills go down your spine when you read that and you watch that scene. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's brutal. It's torture for Batman. He's like getting his ass kicked by this big Hulk guy.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about the first fight between Batman and Bane, where it's so slow and so brutal, and you know your heart sinks because you know Batman doesn't stand a chance, and there's no music to it because you know I guess they wanted you to really just focus on every punch, every kick, you know and it's just a constant onslaught from Bane, and it's brutal, and especially of course the iconic back-breaking moment.
Yeah.
I just love what he says to him, you know. I was wondering what would break first. Your spirit? Oh, your body!
My favorite line in that is, "The shadows betray you because they belong to me."
Yeah, that's a great one. And I
I
also love from Batman in that scene how even though, you know, he probably knew this is hopeless, I'm getting my ass beat, you know, he still tried as best he could. He was defiant up until the end, you know, when he says, "Yes, you were excommunicated by a gang of psychopaths," and when the way Bane punches him after that, you could tell that comment pissed him off.
Yeah. What did you guys think of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's portrayal of the character of John Blake, who is supposed to be this universe's version of Robin?
I mean, I thought he was I thought it was alright.
I personally love the character.
Yeah,
I mean, I honestly don't mind him being, okay, this is supposed to be Robin. I don't mind that personally.
I think they just really added the Robin name towards the end as sort of a, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a nod to the character. I don't think he's really meant to be the Robin.
True, but it does end where it clearly implies, okay, he's going to be taking up Batman's mantle after all this.
Yeah, but he's probably going to wear the bat suit now and fight crime. He's definitely not dressing up in, you know, the Robin costume.
I was actually
sorry, my bad.
That was another thing I kind of guessed in marketing, was that he was going to be sort of the Robin of the movie.
Yeah.
I think part of it was because like his name is John Blake, and there's the third Robin's name is Tim Drake. I just kind of correlated the two randomly. But I like him honestly in it, because you feel like he's somebody who does deserve to take up Bruce's mantle, because he came from the same place. He was an orphan,
and he has a good heart.
And obviously he's capable. So
yeah,
I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the film. He was really good, and I didn't really make the connection that he was Robin up until the end of the film. They mentioned Donald Blake, you know, and his last name was Donald Blake. I'm like, wow, that's Robin. And I also thought it could have been interesting in that, like, the way it ended, it could have like been he could have been the new Batman of the future, another trilogy or something.
that would have been awesome.
It would have been, but I don't think they're not going to do it at this point.
Christopher Nolan was constantly saying, you know, when this movie was going to be released, this is it. I'm done. This is the final.
Yeah.
I also love the football stadium scene. There's such an ominous feeling when that little boy is singing, the national anthem, and you see Bane lurking around.
What a lovely voice.
That line, I think, was improvised by Tom Hardy.
Really?
And, it's just so ominous because you don't know exactly what yet, but it's not good. And, they also cut to shots of, the cops running through the tunnels.
Right.
And one thing I want to talk about, the thematic, like the themes of this entire trilogy, is in a lot of ways, you look at each of these films, and really it's Batman's fight against not just a villain, but it's his fight against an ideology. Mm-hmm. Every villain in each of these films has an ideology. They're trying to make some kind of point.
I think that's a really interesting point to bring up, because it feels like something I really love about comic books is this great dichotomy between protagonist and antagonist. And it's starting to become more like, it's never good or evil anymore. It's more two people who have two very different ways of looking at things.
Yeah.
And you see that all throughout these three movies. That's always, it's always a conflict of ideals rather than morality, necessarily. That's a really good point.
And I do really enjoy the climactic fight between Batman and Bane, because after you see him get his ass handed to him and, dumped in the prison and all that, you want to see Batman rise up and beat the shit out of Bane. And I love the final confrontation. It's great to see Batman, get the better of him and, throw his own line back at him, tell me where the trigger is, and then you have my permission to die, which is similar to what Bane said to him in the prison. And that moment is just ruined when Talia stabs him with the knife.
Yeah.
It's like, no, Batman is, is supposed to be the one who defeats Bane, not have, Bane tie him up and then Selena Kyle blows him away with the freaking cannons.
That is one complaint, is I think his death is very anticlimactic.
It is. It really is. That is a complaint I do have about the movie.
And then Talia's like the primary villain for the next 10 minutes, and then she dies a really half-assed death.
And I could see people who are big fans of Talia from the comics being a little peeved at that, that she kind of was just used as a plot device in the movie.
Maybe she was the mastermind, but I think Bane still, he's so intelligent, he probably came up with a lot of the ideas too. Also, what do you all think of Scarecrow's cameo?
Oh, it's great.
It's great. It's great, but I
Death
like it.
by exile.
Yeah, I just love the whole the idea of making him the judge in the kangaroo court.
Oh yeah.
I wish though that they had at least let him wear the mask. That's something I was disappointed in.
I did think it was interesting. You see Hay in his suit.
That's I guess how they kind of gave that was the nod to the Scarecrow. Liam Neeson also has a great cameo in it.
Yeah.
What I will say in defense of this one is that out of the three, plot-wise, and I guess in terms of visuals too, it is the most epic of the three. A lot happens in it in comparison to the first two. With the whole, he's in the prison trying to break out, and the siege of Gotham,
But there's some definite plot holes in the sense that it doesn't really explain how did Batman get back into Gotham City so easily.
Well, he he knows he's trained in stealth and, not being seen. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to think he could have, jumped on some ship or something and stowed away.
Maybe. But also, how did he have time to create the giant-ass bat signal on the bridge? And, it even cuts to Bane going, impossible! And I'm like, yes, Bane, that is impossible.
Well, of course,
how did that happen?
Of course, Bane, when he says impossible, means how the hell did he come back?
Yeah, I do think it's one thing I forgot to point out is I like the real dystopic feel of this. This really feels like it's a dystopian kind of almost Escape from New York kind of action film or dystopian thriller in a way.
Yeah. I think I remember Oldman saying that Nolan kind of looked at it almost like a war movie, which it does definitely become, especially when the whole police force comes back and they all just start fighting Bane's forces. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Gotham. I like the idea that Gotham City is cut off from the rest of the world and they have to just fend for themselves in these chaotic circumstances. I thought that was an interesting angle to go by.
Now, I don't want to spend too much time on these because we already went a little overboard with our discussions of the Nolan films, but in 2016 we got the film Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, which was a sequel to the Superman film Man of Steel and was a reboot of the Batman franchise. Yeah, I was not a big fan of this one, but me and my friend Eric did a whole review of this, so you could just check out that review if you want to know more of my thoughts on Batman vs. Superman. But what did you guys think of this one?
Well, it is awesome to finally see Batman and Superman together in a major motion picture, and and Ben Affleck is terrific as Batman, but unfortunately, the movie's plot is too difficult to follow, and Jesse Eisenberg sucks as Lex Luthor.
Agreed. I did kind of like there were some things I did like in this film, some things I didn't like. Yes, Affleck, great Batman, not the problem. And the fight scene between Superman and Batman was pretty cool to see them like face off each other for the first time, because that was like one of my lifelong dreams to see Batman and Superman on the big screen. Eisenberg was terrible, and the plot was really nothing that special. And I also should I spoil like the part what now how like does it really matter? Or
Yeah, go ahead. We
Like,
already did spoilers for the other movies. So.
Save Martha? Are you kidding me? That's the best way you convinced
God.
him.
When I first saw this movie in the theater and I saw that scene, I said to myself, oh, people are definitely going to be making fun of this scene.
They did already. Go on, Chris.
Obviously love Affleck's Batman because it's directly influenced from the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns. But same points. It's like it's too freaking long. The plot is crazy. Like it's just too drab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is it just comes off as very incoherent because
yeah.
you could tell 2 hours were cut out of this movie. I haven't seen the director's cut yet. I've heard some people say it's much better. Then I've heard people say it's not that much better. I might give the director's cut a chance at one point, and I know quite a few people actually do like this movie. Now, keep in mind, I liked Man of Steel. I thought Man of Steel was actually really good. But yeah, I not particularly care for this. Maybe I should give it a second chance, but John, you wanted to say something?
I've seen the director's cut, Batman vs Superman. It was okay, but I wouldn't really say it makes the film better. It had some improvement.
Yeah. And now this movie definitely, as you said, Chris, takes inspiration from Dark Knight Returns. Definitely also takes inspiration from the Death of Superman story arc.
I thought that after when they were announcing that they were going to do Batman and Superman, I thought Christian Bale was I thought it was all connecting, but
Yeah, I kind of had the idea that, okay, are they going to connect this to the Nolan films? But then again, if they did that, they would have to come up with some over-contrived reason for why he decides to become Batman again.
Also, the other thing about this film that kind of is flawless is how they were just rushing too much. They were throwing too...
Why is it flawless?
No, I mean not flawed. I mean, wait, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase myself.
Flawed?
It was flawed that they were rushing. They were making it too much Marvel, having all these characters tie in, trying to set up for the next movies, and kind of make it feel like Avengers type But
yeah,
That's
Jeremy,
its biggest problem.
yeah.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I am just so glad that Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy was not touched in any way by this. I mean, there were rumors that Christian Bale was offered $50 million to reprise his role as Batman for this, and he eventually clarified that, none of that's true, and I'm so glad.
There was even a point where I think they said Joseph Gordon-Levitt was going to play Batman, and I guess that was going to be the tie-in with Dark Knight Rises. Okay, he's the new Batman, but yeah, I do think Affleck did a good job, and one thing I find really hilarious is how so many people were whining and moaning and bitching.
It was endless.
It was kind of like a repeat of what happened with Michael Keaton.
Yeah, I mean... Oh, I remember everyone was complaining about him, and in my opinion, he proved them all wrong. I am proud to say that I was on board with him as Batman right from the start. The casting that made me raise an eyebrow was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
And you see, you might hate me for saying this, but I didn't think he was a good Lex Luthor, but I think if he was a different character, it would have been a decent performance.
Yeah, he is far too bubbly and eccentric for Lex Luthor.
Exactly, yeah, because
The red capes are coming. The red capes are coming.
I didn't get that at first when I first heard that.
Lex Luthor was, in the books, he's a very cold, very stoic figure who is deeply evil and greedy. And
you know who would have made a great Lex Luthor? I know a lot of people say Bryan Cranston would have made, which I agree with, but another person who I think would have made a good Lex Luthor is the guy who plays Hank on Breaking Bad, and he played Big Jim in Under the Dome.
I can see that, actually.
I think, Joaquin Phoenix would have also made a great Lex Luthor.
Maybe.
And I also think this movie missed an opportunity where I think it would have been really interesting if Lex Luthor in this movie if they did a more sympathetic portrayal of him, where maybe he was somebody who lost everything during the fight between Superman and Zod in Man of Steel, and that's his motivation for wanting to get back at Superman, is maybe he lost his family, or maybe he lost his entire life or something like that. I think that it would have been really interesting if they did a more sympathetic portrayal of Lex Luthor.
That would have been cool, yeah.
That could have been. I think that would have made a lot more sense. Better than like Lex Luthor setting them up to fight.
I mean, I think that Batman's motivations were done well. You know, he sees, you know, he had a lot of colleagues in a building of his in Metropolis who died because of Superman's fight against General Zod. So, you know, he's rightfully angry against Superman. And, you know, I just love the opening scene where he comforts that little girl whose mother died. And, you know, he looks while he's hugging her at Superman fighting General Zod, and you can see the seething rage in his face. I mean, it's great.
The ending scene, like when he goes to Lex Luthor, like, whoa! I thought you're probably gonna hate me for saying this. I thought Ben Affleck was more intimidating as Batman than Christian Bale. Like,
okay, yeah. I mean,
because like, look, seriously, that part, like in the ending where he's like, wherever you go, wherever you'll be watching. I'm like, whoa.
yeah. I mean, the movie tried to have like some philosophical things, kind of like the Nolan films, like the whole, like, okay, the whole idea, if a being like Superman really did show up, it would change everything, and like, you get why Batman is like against him in the beginning, because it's like, okay, if a being like this did decide to turn against us, we would be fucked.
Yeah.
So you... Yeah.
That's what I find interesting about with Snyder's Superman's portrayal, like, that they touch upon in the film. It's like, how is that he's like, you know, like, this guy's got so much power, but yet he does not take advantage of, like, you know, taking over the world. And I never would have thought of that.
Because that's the
Superman.
whole point of Superman, is he's a good person.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the themes of it, yeah.
Yeah, I give that credit.
Yeah, and Bruce Wayne, you know, obviously he is paranoid and he is overly cautious, and I just love when he says, "That son of a bitch brought the war to us." You know, that just
Irons was a good Alfred, you have to admit.
He's got a great wittiness that Kane didn't really have, although Kane did have some one-liners.
Kane was a lot sweeter as Alfred than Irons was.
Irons is like, he's a little more direct, and he's a little more, like, kind of sarcastic.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Michael Caine's performance as Alfred when we talked about the Nolan films. He's a great Alfred.
Yeah, he was.
Probably my favorite, like, Alfred actor out of all the Alfreds.
He's so loving and caring. I mean, he's a father figure to Bruce.
Yeah.
Let's move on now to Suicide Squad, which I think I hated more than Batman vs. Superman, only because this movie was so clearly trying to be the DC's version of Guardians of the Galaxy, but it was trying so hard that it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
And
from like the soundtrack to just like the sort of the array of crazy characters.
Yeah, it also, really like Batman vs. Superman, it just had a completely incoherent plot, and, you know, the studio really pissed a lot of people off, myself included, with its marketing. You know, they show the Joker throughout, you know, the promotional campaign, you know, the trailers, the posters, and he's barely in the movie.
I know, I was very shocked about that, because I remember when it came out, I thought, like, when Batman vs. Superman was not a hit, people thought, like, everyone was, like, anticipating that Suicide Squad was going to be, like, better than Batman vs. Superman, but no, strike two.
Yeah, there were a lot of reshoots that were done on this movie.
And I don't blame the director of the movie, because the director of this movie, I know he's done other stuff, and some of the stuff he's done, I haven't seen any of it, but I've heard it's really good. I think a lot of this does fall on Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers kind of, like, really screwed with him, I think.
David Ayer did later say that he did deeply regret not having the Joker as the main villain of the film.
He said he wanted the Joker to be the main villain, which I think that could have been great.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because they kind of messed up Enchantress.
Oh god, she sucked.
Here's the thing, she was bad, but here's the thing. I like the look of it, but sometimes I feel like I was watching a video game of it rather than a movie.
But you know what it is also? Enchantress, she should have had a movie setting her up before this, because, okay, she's a supernatural villain, so you're establishing that magic exists in this universe. You should have had a movie before that establishes that magic exists in this universe. Yeah. I mean, technically, you could argue that Wonder Woman is a magical character as well, but I felt like they could have established her a lot more, like...
I mean, there are some things I like in this movie. I did really enjoy Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, Will Smith as Deadshot, and, you know, some of the humor in the film was good.
I really liked Amanda Waller in the movie.
She's always been a great villain in the comics.
Yeah.
She's very ruthless, but like at the same time, it's weird because she's on our side, technically.
Yeah.
So it really makes you wonder.
She like, I think in the movie, they had like a great, like, all-star cast. The casting is great, but they're just not doing a good job with story and character development.
And also a lot of the action, I've only seen the movie once, and that was when it was in theaters. But I remember some of it. You could sometimes hardly tell what was going on.
Yeah. One thing I hated about this movie was they try to introduce this theme of, like, family where, like,
They only
the
knew each other for one
Suicide
day.
Squad, the Suicide Squad start calling each other their family, and I'm like, you didn't even know each other that long.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, it would be a different scenario if, like, they do a few sequels to this, and then maybe make it a trilogy, and then by the third film, they become, the family unit, because that's where they become close enough to call themselves
that's
that.
also similar to how, Bruce Wayne at the end of Batman vs. Superman says at the funeral scene, I failed him in life. And I'm like, you failed him? For most of the movie, you were trying to kill him.
Yeah, really.
This movie's a goddamn mess.
Oh,
I mean, like I said, I liked some parts of it and things I didn't like. I feel like it's a film. It's like, I could like maybe like take it. I don't know. It's.
Wait, you said you liked Will Smith though, right?
Yeah, I thought
he was funny.
Did a good job.
Yeah, I thought he was all right. I don't know.
I mean,
I hated though his daughter in the movie. I thought his daughter was like the stereotypical bad actor right there. Now I just want to briefly touch on Justice League. Now at the time I'm recording this, I have not done my review of Justice League yet, but I will do that, and I'll be putting that review up before this retrospective. So, but yeah, Justice League. I honestly didn't mind it. It has some of the same problems that the other films of this series did, but I did not mind Justice League personally.
I liked it too. Yeah, something that it's not really a spoiler that I like that they highlighted is kind of the partnership that starts to evolve between him and Diana. Yeah. Like Batman and Wonder Woman in the comics, they have this really great back and forth that I think was probably one of my favorite things about that team. And they did have that in this movie. As much as I think it definitely could have been better for the first big Justice League movie, I did like parts of it, and it was enjoyable. It's definitely not as bad as they were making it out to be. I like Justice League. Yeah, it's not too bad.
I didn't really like it that much, but again, I agree. There were some parts I did like, some parts I didn't like. Yeah, like the actors are good, and I just think they were like again lacking the story, the character. There could have been like more. They could have like put more time in these characters.
Yeah, but at least this one felt like it had a coherent plot compared to the other ones, which felt all over the place.
Yeah.
To me, the film almost felt like a live-action version of like an episode of the TV show in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but to be honest, in the time leading up to its release, I really wasn't that excited for it just because, most of the DCEU movies have just not been good and diluted my excitement for it. So I, especially when the bad reviews started coming out, I said, you know what, I'll wait for it to come out on DVD. I mean, maybe I'll find some things in it I like, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, it's like, I did like Man of Steel, though, and I liked Wonder Woman, but I think those were the only two good ones of this series.
I love Wonder Woman too. Yeah, I think that's really the only one that I can.
Oh yes, Wonder Woman's the best one.
Oh yeah, Wonder Woman was great.
I think because when Wonder Woman came out, people were like, maybe Justice League does have potential, but they were wrong.
Well, it's not that they were wrong.
Okay.
I mean, I still like the movie.
I feel like if they do a sequel and they really like pay attention especially now that they got like all the team up stuff out of the way, now that they just are a team, like the second one will like benefit from that. So.
I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I hear that Ben Affleck is considering leaving the role as Batman.
No, I don't want him to. I want him to be Batman as long as I can.
I hope that he does. I'd hate to see him leave, and he's not going to be, I don't think, in The Batman anymore, directed by Matt Reeves.
I'll be upset about that.
They're seeing Jake Gyllenhaal.
I don't see him. No, I'm not seeing
that. That would actually be funny, because, Jake Gyllenhaal worked with Heath Ledger on Brokeback Mountains, and then he went on to become the Joker, so it's like, oh, now he's Batman.
He was offered Batman Begins, but Nolan said he liked his audition, but he said Bale was more stronger.
That would have been kind of creepy if Jake Gyllenhaal played Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy, especially since his sister plays Rachel Dawes in the second one.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about like the Batman TV shows. Like, what are some of your favorite Batman TV shows?
I love the animated series. There's so many great episodes, like the one about Mr. Freeze, where that was actually where they established the whole thing where like he's in love with Nora and all that. I think there was a really good Joker Christmas episode. And obviously the Justice League cartoon, which is like stuff of legends if you're a 90s kid. So yeah, that's a big part of it for me.
Yeah, I agree. Batman the Animated Series is just one of the best shows ever. And also, another one I like, The Batman from the mid 2000s. I think that one's very underrated.
I actually
Yeah,
still haven't seen that.
I'll admit I didn't really give that one a chance. I did see the spin-off movie where he fights Dracula, which I actually liked, but
Yeah.
I'll admit I did not really give that a chance because I loved the animated series so much.
I mean, I didn't watch it while it was first airing, but later in reruns and on DVD, I liked it.
How was the show Brave and the Bold? Because I never watched that one.
I mean,
That was a lot of fun. That was like a throwback to like Silver Age Batman.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
very goofy.
Yeah.
I never saw Brave and the Bold because around that time it came out when I was in high school. I was kind of like done with that point with like animated shows. And yes, I agree. Batman is probably not just like the best animated, like one of the best animated shows. I think it's the best Batman period because it really like stayed true to the Batman mythology and just the origins and also the villains.
One thing I really like about Batman the Animated Series is it's almost like an amalgamation of every Batman because you have silly stuff in it, almost similar to like the Adam West stuff, but then you have really dark stuff too, and it balanced being kid friendly but also being somewhat adult oriented as well. Very very well in my opinion.
It definitely took the material seriously, which is good.
Honestly, I think it's probably the best adaptation of the comics is the animated series. Now, have any of you guys watched... I know there was an animated Batman series in the 70s, I think.
I did only like 2 or 3 episodes. It was okay, but it was nothing really great.
I know they also had the Super Friends in the 70s.
That doesn't hold up for me today.
Well, I haven't seen it since I was a little kid. One thing, back when I was a little kid, I used to watch all the time was Scooby-Doo Meets Batman.
Me too. I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that in years.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's the Adam West show.
Yeah, I love that one. That's what actually first got me into Batman. I remember when I was young, I was I watched TV Land a lot, and I was looking on that channel to see if there was an episode of the Munsters playing, and I instead caught an episode of Batman right as they're going down the poles, and then the intro played, and that's got me hooked.
As a kid, I did watch the 60s show, but at that time, I was not like understanding how like this was all goofy and campy. Because I grew up in a time when Batman was like darker and getting much better throughout the years.
Yeah, I'll admit I've only seen a few episodes of the Adam West show. I mainly know of Adam West's Batman because of the 66 movie.
One of the episodes I can remember like watching was when the Joker like went to school. I'm like, really?
Not as ridiculous as the one where he's in a surfing contest.
Oh yeah, because I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that this would like work today in a Batman film or show, whatever. Unless maybe you're doing a kids show, that's different.
Yeah, it's so hilarious to me how the Joker went from the Cesar Romero, like, I'm going to steal the jewels, to the Joker that's implanting a freaking bomb inside somebody's stomach. I don't know if any of you guys remember this, but in the early 2000s, there was a show called Birds of Prey, which followed the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle. I've never watched it, but I remember when the previews for that were airing on like the WB and stuff. Have any of you guys watched it?
I've heard about it, but I've never seen it.
It's actually not bad. It just never really found an audience.
Alright.
It found a really good place between like sort of the silliness of it and the groundedness of it, because it's basically Barbara Gordon is Oracle in it, and she's sort of on a learning curve after being shot by the Joker. She's like already in like her, I think, early 30s and stuff, and she's like becomes like a mentor to Helena, Bruce and Selena's daughter. It's not bad.
And isn't Harley Quinn like a villain in it?
I think she's pretty much like the lead villain, as I remember, because I know she did the big difference is she's a metahuman in it.
Okay.
That was kind of a weird change, but I guess it works for that show. Yeah, and she does end up wearing like the costume at one point. So.
All right. Now I'll admit I have not seen Gotham yet. How is that?
I've only seen like a few. It is good, but it's really different. It's just not something I'm not used to seeing. Where you're not. It's kind of like similar with Smallville, but different. You're seeing like Bruce Wayne grow up.
Yeah, it's a fun show. I mean, it also takes the material very seriously, and it's fun to see what happened before Bruce Wayne became Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I haven't seen it yet, but isn't the Joker in it though?
Yes, he is.
He is, although
His
he's
name
not
is-
the Joker yet.
Yeah. But the thing is, I don't really like that because to me the whole point of the Joker is he didn't show up till Batman showed up. Like you're not really supposed to know who or what he was.
Yeah,
before
I mean,
that.
I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed they didn't go with the whole he was just an everyman trying to make a living in these horrible circumstances, caused him to fall into the vat of chemicals, but I think it's okay what they did.
Yeah. Doesn't it take a lot of inspiration from year one, though? Isn't it all told? A lot of it's told from Gordon's point of view.
Exactly. Gordon is pretty much the main character on it. Yeah.
It's funny, that guy who plays Gordon played Batman in Batman Year One animated film.
Yeah.
I find that ironic.
I think he's like a lifelong Batman fan too.
I think so. I don't know much about the guy. Plus,
I actually met Ben McKenzie and Maureen Baccarin when they were coming out of a performance of Charlie Cox's off-Broadway show. I forget what it was called. And yeah, they were nice. They gave me their autographs and took photos with me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing about Gotham I find interesting is that, like, this idea was around, like, back when Smallville was starting to, like, come to be, because they originally wanted Smallville to be about, what Gotham is now, but they shelved that. They thought, now let's do Superman. They thought Superman was more interesting to do than Batman's, like...
And this does work really well as, like, the antithesis to Smallville, because that was, like, taking the essence of Superman and telling a long story about it. This is the exact same thing with Batman.
Yeah.
So I think it works really well as, like, a mirror image to that show.
So yeah, that was our retrospective on Batman, where we talked about the comics. We spent a hell of a long time on the movies, and then we talked about the shows. We really ought to, maybe next year when I do these Batman reviews again, maybe we'll do like a whole overview of the entire animated series or
Sounds
something.
awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Say bye, everybody.
But goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
I hope you've all enjoyed listening to me, and keep on enjoying the Batman.